Hello, everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, February 3rd. Holland Squallen, Clis Tuktumut, Ta Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. And I feel which always gives me good feelings as we set about our work here today. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at this meeting, which in this case is Ms. Von Budeau. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So our first order of business, we have no delegations and invited presentations today. Unscheduled public attendance. This would be an opportunity if a member of the public has a matter that's urgent or emergent in nature they would like to get before council before the next council meeting. This would be your opportunity to do that. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5.1. This is a development permit, DP number 648 for 37781 Cleveland Avenue. And as our staff are getting set up for the presentation, this item, there will be opportunity for the proponent and members of the public will be given an opportunity to be heard with respect to consideration of this development permit. And that will happen following the staff presentation and any questions from council. Then we'll go into the public participation portion of the meeting. I will have a script to go through on how to participate on that remotely for those viewing at home. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Asia Philp, planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight I'm presenting development permit number 648 for a proposed brewery located at 37781 Cleveland Avenue. And there are two variances related to accessory buildings that are also requested. The site's located in the downtown south neighborhood at the southern end of Cleveland Avenue and northern end of Cattermall Slough. There's a retail business to the south and a residential property to the north. The property is vacant land, zoned Creative Mixed Use District 2, or MUD 2 for short. The project is subject to development permit areas 2, 3, 7, and 11, and it's located in a flood hazard area. 37781 Cleveland was rezoned from General Industrial I3 to MUD 2 in 2018, originally to enable a mixed-use development with commercial space at grade and residential above. A development permit application was approved in 2019 for the previous proposal, but the development permit was never issued. The property was sold to a new owner who has submitted the current proposal for the brewery. So this application proposes an approximately 300 square meter development comprising a 2-story brewery and an accessory lounge. There's also a unique accessory structure proposed, a restored rail car that will function as additional lounge seating for the brewery. There's also an accessory kitchen and a waste building proposed. 6 tandem parking spaces are provided off the lane. This meets our zoning bylaw minimum requirements. And the proposed Class A and B bike parking also meet the minimum requirements. So the proposal generally meets DPA 3 and 7 form and character guidelines. The proposed brewery will add to the vibrancy, activation, and gathering opportunities at the south end of Cleveland Avenue. It aligns with our DPA 3 and 7 objectives to revitalize the downtown south neighborhood and foster a distinctive and creative character there. The first variance request is to vary the maximum number of accessory buildings from 1 to 3, as highlighted on the site plan here. The applicant has proposed the 3 accessory buildings. So there's a waste storage building, that's building 1, the kitchen building 2, and the converted train car to be used for lounge, that's building 3. The property is constrained by its small size and due to the unique aspects of the train car. Neither the accessory kitchen nor the waste storage building can be combined with the train car to meet the 1 accessory building limit. Staff support this variance. It's not anticipated to have any negative impacts on the adjacent properties. It would allow for a unique structure that aligns with the intent of the MUD 2 zone and our applicable OCP policies. The second variance request is to vary the interior side setback for accessory buildings from 1.2 meters down to 0.0 meters. The setback reductions are shown here on the site plan. The current setback is the line shown in dotted red. The requested setback is shown in green. Staff support this variance as the principal building interior side setback in the MUD 2 zone is a 0 lot line to encourage a continuous streetscape frontage. The 0 lot line accessory building interior side setback would align with the intent of the principal building setback, and the variance also aligns with the OCP policies and our DP area objectives. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development showcase. Development sign has been posted on the site. Notifications pertaining to the proposed variances were sent in accordance with the Local Government Act. 2 public comments have been received to date, and these comments focused on the future ability of the adjacent properties to develop, given the 0 lot line development on the subject site, as well as concerns around on-site and off-site grading and road frontage build-out. The proposal is consistent with Strategic Plan Objective 4.4 to create a net increase of employment lands and spaces. The proposal also aligns with OCP objectives and policies in the downtown Squamish section of the plan. The new brewery could add to the vibrancy and activation at the south end of Cleveland Avenue. So for that reason, staff are recommending approval of DP 648 and the associated variances as the project meets the DPA 3 and 7 guidelines and it aligns with our applicable policies. Staff further recommend that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the DP following registration of our standard wildfire hazard covenant and flood hazard covenant. So with that, I'll pass it back to the chair for questions and comments.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, questions? I will get us started as no one seems to be chomping at the bit. One of the variances are proposed here is the side setback, and so in the zoning, just want to make sure I have this right in my mind. The principal buildings could be built to 0 lot line. So if whatever the design was, it could be to 0 lot line, and it's the accessory buildings that have a setback. Why is that recommended sort of broadly in the zone versus 0 setback for any buildings, principal or accessory? Like, what's the rationale there?
Yeah, so the accessory setback is in the general regs section of the zoning bylaw. And the way many of our zones are structured, it just references that. And so it's kind of like more of a blanket approach to dealing with accessory buildings, whereas they're not specific custom setbacks related to each specific zone. So that's kind of the broad answer to why we have this 1.2 setback for accessory versus principal buildings.
Yeah. Thank you. And if I may add, generally speaking, our zones will have more than a 0.0 or sorry, a 0 meter setback from the side lot line. So it's sort of an average for the accessory buildings. Generally, when this zone was contemplated, accessory buildings weren't likely given what was contemplated for the mixed use. So you would get 2 buildings as opposed to 1 building and multiple accessory buildings, which is why it wasn't addressed in the zone.
Okay. Okay, I'll ponder that. Thank you. With Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, can we just see one of the diagrams and just clarify which side or sides and side setback applies to? So perpendicular to the streets.
Yeah.
So a comment I've gotten from some folks in the area, besides what's in the correspondence, has been concern about where we may go in terms of the height of Cleveland as part of our flood management and diking and so on, and how a 0 meter side setback complicates sort of some of the neighboring properties in that area of sort of depending on when they go ahead and what we decide to do with Cleveland, raising that up as a dike, how zero setback really constrains what everyone else can do if they're right up to the lot line. Is that something that you've looked at, or can you speak to how that might be addressed or thought about?
I'll start again. Through the chair, it is a really complicated area with the dike and the Cattermall and the potential future Cleveland road connection. No plans have been formalized. Nothing is being worked on in detail from an engineering perspective. And so we have to process the applications that are before us with the best information that we have. So we're working with our engineering department to have an interim design for the frontage build out that will be relatively, like, there's not going to be a lot of investment made or a lot of change to that area. And the driver of that is mostly because we don't want to encroach upon, there's a dike setback that applies to the Cleveland frontage in this area. And so if we do any serious grading works in there, it would trigger a Dike Maintenance Act application. And we want to avoid that at this point, since we don't know what the ultimate build out of Cleveland will be. And we have no formal applications for either the north or the south property. And so we're not sure what their intentions are because they have not made an application at this point.
Sorry, don't we write in, I can't remember which parcel it is, but have a hotel that we have, I think, rezoned for? So there are some, or are we talking about different things in terms of like a DP versus a zoning application, or is that?
To my knowledge, the application to the south did not proceed and is not being actively worked on. And they are considering a completely different proposal.
Okay, so am I correct then in thinking that? So, sorry, I understand the piece of dealing with variances as they come in, but given what all the issues at play here, is there maybe an increased reason to not contemplate the 0 meter setback and sort of figure out on our end where we want to go with this street, even if we don't do the work, but figure out where we want to go with Cleveland, and then entertain more side setbacks and so on when, you know, it's a little more clear of what sort of room we have to play with, and so we have that, if that side setback is more important, we have that available to us.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I think it's important to note that at this point, the future of Cleveland isn't within our work plans. We don't know what that would look like. So it's really difficult to consider a variance to something that is not currently in the work plan. That being said, we've seen design solutions for similar situations, such as in Hunter Place. So we don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility to design something that would work. Our engineers have reviewed this and the questions regarding whether or not you could grade Cleveland in a way that would make everything viable. And they didn't foresee a problem when reviewing it in relation to the variance, which is only for 1.2 meters. So it's not a significant variance in staff's opinion, given the size of the site.
Councillor French?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. Landscaping is noted as not applicable in the development permit area 3 guidelines. And the architectural drawings do show a bit of vegetation, so it looks like some thought has been put into some amount of landscaping. And the guidelines talk about using vegetation to enhance the appearance of buildings, using native plant species, considering the use of drought-resistant plants, screening parking areas and waste buildings with vegetation, and also vegetation as potentially shade devices. All of these, I think, are pertinent to this project. So I'd like to know, what is it about this property and this development that allows for the DPA 3 landscape guidelines to be exempt from the planning at this point in the approval process?
Through the chair, so that's my mistake. It probably should have said that it meets the guidelines. There is very, very minimal landscaping on the property. but there is some. And I think it meets the intent of the guidelines. So instead of saying not applicable, it should have said meet the guidelines.
Okay, I have the same question about lighting, and now I'm anticipating it's probably the same answer. But I prepared these words, so I'll share them anyway. So again, DPA 3 guidelines, the indication is not applicable for lighting. And this project does have outdoor lighting. Adjacent properties could potentially be impacted by light spillover. Pedestrian walkways are present here that will be used by both employees and visitors. Now, and one of the reasons that I wanted to focus in on this is there is an example just around the corner from us here where somehow lighting guidelines seem to have been skirted. New building has an entire wall that's bottom lit, clearly against night sky compliance guidelines, and I think also probably contrary to district lighting guidelines. So I want to make sure that we don't make lighting errors, omissions like that again. So same question, in the not being applicable with DPA 3.
Yeah, so you intuited correctly. It probably should have said meets guidelines. There is minimal lighting, but it's all wall sconces that are downlit. And so it does meet our guidelines. We have some detailed guidelines around color temperature and things like that that we can secure through the development permit process. It's a really hard thing to then check in the field and then follow up on, but that's not a conversation for this table.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor Herford.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton, then Anderson.
Yeah, thanks very much. Following on, when I initially read the report, there didn't appear to be any concerns or correspondence, so I was feeling comfortable moving forward with it. And now I want to understand more clearly what. So within the MUD 2 zone, a development could construct a building from lot line to lot line with 0 lot line setback, correct?
Yes.
So this developer can go lot line to lot line. The only thing here is whether their accessory building hits the lot line, correct?
Correct.
And then my next question is, so you noted that the accessory building, because that's in section 4.4, I think, of our zoning bylaw. And so it seems like the intent of the MUD 2 zone isn't really captured in section 4.4, it's just a different section. Would it be reasonable for staff to contemplate, or would it be possible for staff to contemplate an accessory building modification in the MUD 2 zone following this variance?
Yeah, through the chair, totally.
Thank you. One of the comments in the correspondence spoke to the fairness of our zoning, of us allowing one property to do something and others not. And that, I think, if there's a request that's in the spirit of a zone, I think we should probably take the next step and put that change into the zone in its entirety, so that all property owners within that zone have the same rights as the variance. That's a comment to council,
Yeah.
not a question for staff. Thank you.
I'll take the bait on that. And I would say things such as that do make up our sort of annual zoning bylaw updates. That is sort of an accumulation of things such as this. So perhaps, go ahead.
Yeah, can I follow on with a question? This was the question for staff.
Yes, we got you. Go ahead.
Would you need a motion from council to add that to the list of things that will come forward in future zoning amendments?
Thank you for that question. It is actually already on our zoning tracker following review of this project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
I appreciated the discussion following Councillor Pettingill's questions, illustrating the complexity of the area and having no formal plans, and that we must work with the best information we have available. And that concerns we don't want to be encroaching upon the future dike setback and the ultimate build out of Cleveland. We've discussed the setback issue. Another issue or suggestion that has been brought forward is to adjust the elevation of the main floor, the main building, to accommodate future increases to grading toward the Cattermole Slough and oceanfront public realm grades. I wonder, you may be repeating the same considerations, but I wonder if we could check off that suggestion that's come forward to also address the elevation of that main floor of the building. Thank you.
Any further comment on?
No, we acknowledge the comment. And our engineers are working on it with the applicant as well as the neighboring owners.
So, and just to be clear, that's everything from just what the grade should be. What we're considering here isn't height, so and not necessarily how much, if the site does need to come up to, I was there today and the alley kind of comes up to or what is Cleveland now, that gravel rises up to the road grade. All those elevations are done through a technical process, not this process. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, floodplain management bylaw dictates kind of the bare minimum elevation that this property will have to go to, and then that will dictate the civil design in terms of stormwater and access and the full off-site road improvements.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. Just a few questions around the transportation components to the site. My first is, I'm wondering if staff can speak to the functionality of tandem sites on a commercial space.
Through the chair, we don't have a lot of like in terms of monitoring or seeing the functionality play out. Generally, it can be complicated when it's a mix of employee parking and customer parking, which this is. However, there will also be staff's intention with the build out of Cleveland is to retain some of the parking in that gravel road frontage so that there will be some additional on-street parking available. So in theory, I think through a combination of if the applicant does appropriate signage to kind of say, hey, employees are parking here and you can park behind them and that's okay, or some way to get that across to folks that it could function, and it really just depends on how well they go about that.
And so I guess my other question is like this, as per our zoning bylaw, we allow for tandem parking like this layout as per our bylaw?
Through the chair, yeah, we do allow tandem parking in general.
All right, thank you for that. My other question was around the bike parking. So as it's laid out, am I expected, like, is a visitor to the site expected to either come in the laneway or off of Cleveland, get off their bike, and then walk it through the site to get to the bike parking? Like, I'm just curious how you actually get there and the visibility of it.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. The bike parking is shown here. It's the black lines that are kind of behind the waste room. And so you would likely dismount and walk your bike through the area. There's a minimum clearance there that's adequate to get a bike through, notwithstanding someone opening that back door. Yeah.
Okay, and then some of the pictures in the package, and granted they're architectural pictures, have some bike parking at the front of the site, but I don't see those in the detailed design. And I'm just curious if that's something that is more aesthetic or if that's actually something that is being considered.
Yeah, through the chair, that was the applicant's initial proposal, was to use some of the Cleveland road right-of-way as patio and bike parking. We've encouraged the applicant to make a patio permit after the development's complete so that we can just manage the design of the Cleveland frontage without having to consider that request and its complicating factors. So we've kind of kicked that down the road to deal with through a patio permit process.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
On the topic of the bike parking, so what broadly this meets the standard for bike parking. I'm happy to hear that there's could be future things that exceed that, which I think would be appropriate for the site. My question is the Class A spots appear to be in an office on the second floor, and in a commercial operation like that arrangement meets the bylaw, like the access upstairs and enough room to get through there and that sort of thing. That's what I'm reading. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. It meets our bylaw in terms of real world functionality. It really depends on how light your bicycle is and how strong you are to get it up to the second floor. And imagine that some of the Class B parking might be utilized by employees on the site as well.
So at what point, like how much control do we have over this actually happening? To me, that looks like a really good spot for filing cabinets. Just practically, given that that's where the admin space is and so on. Like, is it only at this point? Like, how built does that need to be? I know we're not going in and auditing after on many things. So, how do we ensure that this is functioning correctly? Both of these bike parking things don't feel like they're being nailed in my mind, although they might meet the minimum of the permit area. So, can you speak to that generally?
It meets the zoning bylaw requirements that we outline, and so that's what we reviewed it against. In terms of real world functionality, there might be some challenges there.
If I may add to the chair, what typically happens is upon build out, we will do an inspection at occupancy to ensure that the zoning items are in place. And so at occupancy, we can confirm, but as with all things, the use of the property over time might change and we would have very little control over that.
Okay. Through my speakers list at this point, is there anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, just looking at the diagrams, and it looks like a pretty tight space if there are cars parked to get to your, if I'm understanding the diagram correctly, to get to the bike parking, and then that blocks off access to the waste area, proposed waste area. The kitchen's on the other side, and so like there's a fair bit in the guidelines about safety and accessibility and some of these things. I guess how is it envisioned that the waste will be accessed? It looks like it's from the sort of, you have to go to the outside property line to get in as opposed to internal to the site when you're managing waste. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, that's accurate. The access is off the lane. And so you would go down the path that's open on the south side and into the lane to get into the waste room.
Okay, and then just two other things. There's a note about sort of the proponent's hesitation on a no gas covenant, and they made some claims. I did some research and spoke to some people, and I found a number of examples of non-gas breweries, and some other folks said, there may be some expense, but it's not at all insurmountable. Are we solely relying on the proponent's comments with this aspect, or did staff sort of do any due diligence on the proponent claims here?
Through the chair, we didn't do any additional research.
Okay, thank you. And then just the last piece, coming back to the setback piece. I know there's it sounds like some suggestion from my colleague that if I understood, since buildings currently in the MUD 2 can have no setback, maybe we just adjust that for accessory as well in the MUD 2. But I'm wondering, in this particular area of town, given our general understanding of what we need to do to manage flood and so on, wouldn't it make more sense, or wouldn't our direction be to actually have a setback for all buildings, not just accessory in MUD 2 in this area? And so maybe it's a MUD 5 or mud 6 or whatever it is, as opposed to getting rid of all setbacks. Maybe this is an area where until we figure out some of our diking and so on, we would actually want to retain setbacks.
Through the chair, it's something that staff can discuss with our flood engineer experts. Certainly, the side setback is not as nearly as important as the front and rear setbacks from a flood perspective, where it touches a public street that could potentially have a grade change to accommodate floodways or diking in the future.
So if I can just follow, I mean, and maybe this is a misunderstanding on my part, but I'm sort of assuming that if we sort of change what we do with Cleveland and so on, that might significantly change what people may want to do with fill and elevation of their site. And then if their site is lifting up, the fact that there's no longer a setback, you end up with like a really weird and more challenging sort of circumstance because you don't have that setback between lots as heights and sort of ground floor heights are being changed. Or am I wrong? I guess.
I'll make a comment and then I'll go to staff to see if there's additional comment. I think that our task for better, for worse, or for whether how simple or complex it is to compare it against the regulations that we have today, and whether it meets or doesn't. That's the piece. So I think, you know, the zone does allow that zero setback for the main buildings. And that is a constant at this point, and unless some other process starts, in which case we could contemplate that otherwise. But the building setback's not going to change in this discussion. So it's these accessory pieces, and we've heard the advice of staff. So do you want to clarify your question, or?
Yeah, I guess what I'm grappling with, like, I think there's been sort of my feeling is that actually the regulations as they are, even if it's sort of misaligned between accessory and principal, it actually makes sense to have a setback, and that's actually the direction we might go if we were stepping back from this application. And so understanding, does a variance make sense? You know, maybe not. Or if like the sort of things I'm worried about, future changes in elevations are sort of a non-starter, and it really does make sense that everything should be zero setback, and that's, you know, that puts a different context on the variance. So that's what I'm trying to understand is, can I justify the variance piece?
I'll go to staff. Any other comments on the setback piece and flood?
Yeah, so two things. Our flood engineers have reviewed the plans. There's a flood hazard report associated with it, and they're aware of the current situation on Cleveland, and they are okay with the design as proposed. And then secondly, there is no solid plan for Cleveland at this point, and so we do have to work with the existing situation that's out there with the intent not to trigger a dike maintenance act for something that is going to be very minimally improved in association with this project.
And if I may add, through the chair, I would just say that when the Mud 2 zone was being developed in 2017, it did have quite a bit of input from our engineering department. They did not identify the zero lot line on the interior lot line as a issue at that point. So this didn't happen necessarily like in a vortex without their input.
Okay. Council, we do have a public hearing portion of this. So if there's any further questions before we do that, we will have another opportunity following. So any further questions at this juncture? Okay, please bear with me. I do have a bit of a, not a bit, I have a script to read. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard with respect to council's consideration of development permit DP 648 for 37781 Cleveland Avenue. The proposed variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2017 are outlined in the development permit included as part of the agenda and available on the district's website. Members of the public are reminded that you may only speak to the proposed variances. And those are vary the number of accessory buildings from 1 to 3 accessory buildings, and vary the interior side setback for accessory buildings from 1.2 meters to 0.0 meters. And we're trying to make this a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the process. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other persons addressing council. All speakers will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address council. For all speakers, please start your remarks by clearly stating your name and neighborhood. There are instructions of how to participate online. This should be on your screen, and there is a moderator who will communicate with people participating online. At this point, we leave space for Squamish Nation officials to speak or comment on the proposed zoning. We do not have any in attendance this evening. The applicant now has an opportunity. And again, I don't believe the applicant is here with us this evening. Oh, would you like to speak on this? No. So next, I'll call on any members of the public. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address council. I'll first call on speakers participating in person, which there are none. Please, and I will look to our online moderator to see if there's anyone online. I'm going to give the folks, just if there is anyone online, the instructions there on how to virtually raise your hand are on your screen. I will stretch your time a little bit to make sure everyone has opportunity to participate. And there is no one in person in council chambers that wishes to speak to this. And I'm looking to our online moderator, and there's still nothing online.
Yeah, currently nobody online.
Okay. So this will conclude the time for public submissions. Council, we have the recommendation before us to require more information in advance of that debate. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. I just want to clarify on the tandem parking. It doesn't seem like it's explicitly allowed in our zoning bylaw. So is it implicitly allowed by it not being excluded? Like it doesn't actually list it anywhere in section 41 as being allowed or not allowed.
Through the chair, I believe that's correct. There's just certain CD zones that we have prohibited it in that do not apply to the section 41 regs that apply to this project.
We have regulations in section 41 though that talk about drive aisles, which I would assume would be intended on accessing parking spaces. So it seems odd that we would allow it by omission.
Through the chair, that the drive aisle section is separate from the parking stall portion, and the drive aisle in this case is the lane way. So the parking spaces are accessed directly off the lane.
Adjacent to that, how is there a consideration in our DP areas for loading? I see the kitchen is in this second accessory building in the back corner. And does loading, is that what that back, I guess that's the southwest corner of the property? Is that meant to be the loading zone, or is that just happen meant to happen in the alleyway, or do we have anything that's regulating that?
Through the chair, the zoning bylaw loading section for very small sites permits off-street loading, which would be occurring in both the lane and potentially in the Cleveland road right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. Council, through my speakers list, we have a recommendation before us. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Councillor French seconds. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much to staff for bringing forward a fairly clear explanation of these two variances. The two variances are really the pieces I'm focusing on. The idea that, and when we read our zoning bylaw, we can see that section 4 of our zoning bylaw, which speaks to the side setbacks for accessory buildings, I can completely understand that was somewhat divorced from the MUD 2 conversation when MUD 2 was set. And it's quite clear that the spirit of the MUD 2 zone is to have zero lot line setbacks. And so I think the variances make sense here. Regarding the number of accessory buildings, I could imagine configurations where an architect could put things together in a way to reduce the number of accessory buildings, but I don't think that really has a purpose, because I don't see the number of accessory buildings here being an undue burden to any other landowners in the area. So, yep, with that, I'm encouraged by the creativity of the application, although that is not at all a basis of my decision here. It does look like an interesting brewery, and I look forward to hearing staff's recommendation on accessory buildings in MUD 2 zones in general in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor French is seconder.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. I too support issuing the development permit for this project. As the mayor has noted, the plans don't include a loading zone. That combined with the tandem parking, I'm sure, is going to create future headaches for both delivery companies and for the poor suckers who get trapped in against the building in the tandem parking. These are trade-offs that have to be made when developing on small downtown lots like this one. And over time, I'm sure that the business owners and the managers will figure out ways around these challenges. And I'm sure we'll also figure out different and creative ways to park bicycles that don't involve hiking them up a flight of stairs. And I agree with Councillor Hamilton, creativity wins out here. It's not a deciding factor for me, but 2 thumbs up to these folks who are boldly moving ahead with a concept that isn't thriving right now. I hope these folks have success with the project.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Anderson, then Pettingill.
Thank you. I'm satisfied that staff are taking care to take into account all that they can this time with respect to the public works evolution of this area and all its complexities. I'm satisfied with what I've heard this evening from planning and via planning from engineering. Councillor French has referred to, if you like, the business prospects. We wish them well, and that some members of the public have expressed skepticism regarding the state of the small craft brewery business. However, this project proponent is in fact very experienced in this business in North Vancouver. And while it's not business plans are not a matter of council to comment on, we would just simply wish them the best. Another matter I'd like to comment on, however, is in the DPA 3 guidelines, 36.4a refers to context, character, citing, and orientation. I'll just observe that I would prefer to see a color scheme for the Bud rail diesel car feature. It is a heritage piece, and in the past, under the Pacific Great Eastern Railway, the color of this railway car, which I and perhaps other members of council have actually ridden in on the way up to Lillooet or down in the North Shore, was green, silver, and orange. And later, every time we had a change of government, they changed the color of the railway. In the latter phase of use, it was a silver, blue, and white combination. I know that, or I expect that the development project will involve a decor, attention to decor in the railway car, where photos of these older color schemes will be there. But I would just note that the Railway Museum of BC, which has 2 of these cars in each of those color schemes, they're just spending $15,000, which isn't a lot, to repaint one of their cars. And I would just perhaps put the suggestion out there that this might be considered by the development proponent, giving it one of its original color schemes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not there on this application, so I at this point, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support it. I actually really like the rail car, and it seems like it could be a cool thing. When I look at the DPA guidelines and my understanding of safe and efficient site flow, when I look where the bike parking is, the narrow, access points provided, when I think about some of the bikes with trailers and stuff, and there's people will presumably be having food there and not just beer. To me, it feels like the site is too compact, there's too much stuff on that site to a point where it doesn't meet what I see holistically as what the guidelines are looking at. Speaking to some other folks in the area and some of the correspondence we've gotten, and this, is maybe partly another discussion, but I think there is some from other properties feeling like they are hesitant to go forward until we have more clarity on what we want to do with that area. And I do respect their apprehension that if we remove the setbacks, that makes things even more challenging for them. And so removing the setbacks at this point until we have more certainty or can provide more certainty of which direction we want to go, from what I'm hearing is that makes it more challenging for the other properties. And then, I always look at, hey, there's some winds that could offset this, and here it's proposing gas to power the whole thing, which is not where we need to be in a climate emergency. So I can't sort of look to like, oh, well, there's some of these offsetting things. And so for me, on balance, it just doesn't make the cut.
Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I will support the motion on the floor. I think these are the most challenging components when we start to see piecemeal redevelopment. It's really difficult to have the full vision of how this will work out. Like there's just so many moving pieces that we can't expect to have everything nailed down 100% before we start to see applications come in, and we have a duty to respond to applications when they do come in and are presented to us. In terms of the variances that are being sought, the biggest concern for me when I look at variances is fairness and process and impact on neighboring properties. And if I look at the MUD 2 zone and the variances being requested, they really are quite minimal. The setback request to go to 0 lot line for the accessory dwelling building units is really more of a hiccup, I think, in the existing zoning more than anything else. And while we are allowing 3 accessory units as opposed to just 1, I think that is one of the trade-offs that we have when we're trying to support redevelopment of some of these smaller, narrower lots downtown. We need to be a bit flexible. My bigger concerns are some of the components in our zoning bylaw around the tandem parking and the functionality of the bike parking. And I think that as this continues to move forward, that hopefully we can start to see maybe some of that bike parking get pulled out onto the sidewalk just for functionality purposes and ease of access over time. And very much best of wishes to the owners and managers in trying to manage the tandem parking. But as that is allowed in our current zoning bylaw, it's not something that's before council for consideration this evening. And so I will support the variances requested.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, thanks to the chair. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to support this either. I have some concerns about the layout vis-a-vis the accessibility of the unit, but also the additional building variances that are being requested. I'm also disappointed in the access to the bike parking, so I hope that evolves over time too. The biggest thing I'm concerned about, though, is the elimination of the setbacks and whether or not that's fair to current and future neighbors. And I'm also concerned about the parking situation. I'm not convinced that tandem parking is going to work very well in a space like this. But also, we heard 2 years ago from residents on, I can't remember if it was 2nd or 3rd, but around that area, talking about how much congestion they experience in the evenings when Cliffside starts getting really busy. And I can only assume this is going to compound that issue as well. But of course, I hope that most people are not driving if they're drinking. But mostly it's the elimination of the setbacks that have me concerned, because I'm just concerned about how that's going to impact neighbors. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. My comments are going to form two. One is the 2 parts. So first part is the variances. As others have said, I think the 0 setback for the main building makes good sense in the zone when that was a conscious decision. I feel like this required accessory setback is I think it was called a hiccup over here from Councillor Stoner. I'll take that, and just not an intended and intentional piece for me. I think I'm supportive of the zero setback. I think given that it aligns with the setback possibility of a main, if this is all contained in one building, and that goes to the next piece, which is the number of structures on the site. I think I really like what zoning bylaw, or all of our zoning bylaws are quite broad stroked, except for the CD zones that really are for specific things. And I haven't had a meal in a converted rail car on a commercial site in downtown. Like this is a unique use. And I think, and I'm happy to vary this particular regulation for to enable that. And so the variances that are being asked, I'm supportive of. I've heard from staff that in their that the rest of the development permit area guidelines are met. The tandem parking, others have spoken to that. I think, but if it fits and it's allowed, then I guess that fits. I do think that the bike parking needs improvement. The fact that this meets our requirements makes me want to look at our requirements. I think the size and shape of bicycles has changed dramatically, even in the last 5 years, from the bikes that folks are taking shopping that are, the much longer wheelbase, much bigger. I'd say that our Class A likely needs to be revisited for those reasons as well. And in this case, that Class A is located on the second floor. I am looking forward to riding my bicycle to this business when they're up and running. I will not use that rear parking. It's not visible to the customer when they're trying to relax and enjoy their meal. Their bike's locked up in the back alley. I also think from an attraction and retention standpoint of staff, that it's incredibly important that the bike parking gets a much broader focus, not tucked in where it fits. Now, I think that'll just be a reality of the business as you get up and running. And I've seen other businesses actually in this space respond to this exact condition with rather sizable investments in bike parking. So I would have liked to seen that front and center here, but given that we weren't looking at varying parking or anything else, I will accept that it meets our regulations. However, I do think that our regulations fall short. I hope that that can be improved as they move towards actually realizing this project. So I'll be supporting. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettinggill, Greenlaw opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. On those comments, I am curious if the zoning bylaw update also has a review of the bicycle parking component already on the list, or if I should make a motion to that effect.
Through the chair at this time, I don't know. We generally are planning to do a parking review of our zoning bylaw in 2028, I believe, following the downtown parking review. And we would review bike parking at that time.
So I'd like to make a motion that the bike parking requirements be added to the zoning bylaw review list.
I'm ready to second that, but I'm not doing that yet. I'll go to Councillor Pettinggill.
Just a question of clarification. I think my understanding is the bylaw has some requirements around counts or ratios, maybe a bit of size, but in terms of like width of access points and all that kind of thing, is that in the bylaw? Like, to my mind, that's in our DPA guidelines. It's up to us to decide if we think it meets that. I thought it didn't tonight, but I'm just wondering if that's kind of actually already there in our DPA guidelines and it's how we're looking at it, or do we need, or could we put more measurement specific stuff in a bylaw? Is that?
So as we're about to there's not a motion on the floor, but are we pointing that motion at the right place? Is it exclusively in the zoning bylaw, or is it the interaction of these two things that should be considered?
Start. Through the chair, it is the interaction of the two. So the zoning bylaw does contain regulations on size and like other things related. That said, it does meet those requirements. And so there is, when we turn to the guidelines, there are the guidelines as well for us, and that gives us a little bit more leeway. In this case, staff recognized it was totally a trade-off. It's a very tight site. There was really very minimal options for the bike racks and the Class A parking for these folks. The Class A parking could have gone on the ground floor, which would have taken up space that they need for the brewery equipment because it's such a small site. So there's just big trade-offs here because of the small site.
Okay. I think council, as much as I was ready to second that motion, I think there's a lot of work supported by our transportation master plan, our CCAP work and so on that will likely play into future regulations with this. So I'm comfortable leaving this part of that discussion through that process. If you're okay with that, Councillor Stoner. Thank you. Okay, we will move on now to the council. We're on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Councillor French?
Yes, I would like to pull B6, also known as BVI, the Heritage BC 45 years letter, and also D1I, Respectful Workplace Policy 2025 annual report.
Okay, we'll pull those. We'll deal with those at the appropriate time. Anyone else? Seeing none, could I look to someone to move the remainder of the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So next we have the, we'll deal with those at the appropriate time. Next we have the request for an appointment to the Sea to Sky Regional Transit Committee, appointment for 2026. We don't have a presentation on this, but we do have a recommendation, which Councillor Penningham. You're going to move the recommendation. Thank you. Second by Councillor French. Any comments? Councillor Anderson?
I note that the province is drawing reference to the Victoria Region Transit Committee as a model, or commission as a model. This is something of interest to us. We share a lot in transit or regional transit issues, one of them being our Howe Sound Highway and the Malahat Highway. Today, I believe every morning there are 5 buses leaving Duncan, North Cowichan for Victoria. We don't have any other than the Squamish Connector service. So I think it's advantageous that this reference is made in the comparison, and that we might be able to kind of cross-pollinate ideas and solutions between Southern Vancouver Island and ourselves. So I appreciate this reference in the vision for the future Regional Transit Committee and its work. It also refers in the Victoria Region Transit Commission case to future expansion possibilities, including pedestrian uses, pedestrian and cycling uses of rail corridors, which they have as well as so do we. And there's also maybe an opportunity, not for Vancouver Island, but in our case, to consider ferry in expansion possibilities, or something that a future commission or committee for the Sea to Sky might consider. So I just thought I'd draw attention to that comparison or reference to the Victoria region circumstances, and I think that could be very fruitful ongoing drawing from each other as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly want to speak to I think how exciting it is that we are at this point. It's been well over a decade of ongoing advocacy work. And while this isn't by any means the finish line, I think it helps to recognize that we are formalizing the advocacy work and the ongoing research that's needed in order to really make this regional transit system a success. And also a continued thanks to all the folks who are recognized as part of the committee, but especially the SLRD, who continues to hold a lot of the effort in coordination, in research and staff time, which is being funded through a provincial grant that many communities got a few years ago called the Growing Communities Fund. And there was agreement at the regional district board level to actually set a solid chunk of that money aside in order to advance regional transit on all of our behalfs, because it was such a core priority at the region. And so just grateful that that work is coming to fruition.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd just like to thank my colleagues for the support for this appointment. Work has been ongoing on this file. I've had participated in multiple meetings with the minister, with the premier, with everybody that is will need to be at the table to advance this, and so I'm looking forward to moving this as far down the line as possible in the time that I have in this role while we're here. So hopefully we'll hear some more. The intention is to have some more things to say on this in the near future as this work advances in a meaningful way. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the appointment of chief and deputy chief election officers for the 2026 general local election. And we have Ms. Von Budeau here with us, and she'll run us through.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Melissa Mavluto. I'm Director of Corporate Services, and Julie Wingy, GM of Corporate Administration, will be joining me very shortly here, but I'll kick off the presentation. This evening, we're presenting on the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officer appointments. The purpose and recommendation. Today, we are here to request those appointments for the October 17th, 2026 general local election. The recommendation is to appoint Melissa Von Budeau as Chief Election Officer, Victoria Ray and Julie Wengi as Deputy Chief Election Officers. Section 58 of the Local Government Act states that a local government must appoint a Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer for each election. That pretty much summarizes why I'm here, but I wanted to take a couple of slides to help promote the election a little bit and to get the word out. So I appreciate it if you'd bear with me for a couple of minutes. So the next general local election cycle has started, and it's a legislative requirement every 4 years for communities in BC. It is governed by the Local Government Act and sets the timeline for most elements of the election process, including important dates for electors. Advanced voter registration is available until August 25th. Amongst other tasks, staff are currently working to confirm the dates of advanced voting opportunities. The dates and locations here are still tentative as we work through coordinating logistics. We plan to offer one additional advanced voting location this year from what we offered in 2022, and that location is likely going to be Totem Hall. And then general voting day is October 17th. I'd like to encourage electors to keep an eye on the district website and social media channels for confirmation of the dates closer to the election and to take advantage of the advanced voting opportunities. A quick review of the requirements to vote. Voters must be a Canadian citizen, 18 years of age or older, a resident of BC for the past 6 months, and that date is April 16th, 2026 this year, a resident of the municipality, and not disqualified under the Local Government Act or any other legislation or be otherwise disqualified. And you'll probably know if you are. And then my final slide here is just another pitch about registering to vote. The district utilizes the provincial voters list, and voters can register in advance and update their information by going to the Elections BC website. This is strongly encouraged as it will really streamline the voting experience when electors come to vote. And once again, advanced registration is available until August 25th. After August 25th, voters will be required to register at the time they cast their ballots. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. Generally, we try to avoid campaigning in this room, but campaigning for the election, I suppose in this context will allow. Was that your hand, Councillor Stoner? You have a question? Any questions before we go to a motion? Councillor Stoner?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second by Councillor French. Any comments or?
Just to say that you are doing your job as Chief Elections Officer extraordinarily well already by getting the word out early around the election. So thank you in advance for your work today and every day.
Councillor French?
I love elections. Federal, provincial, municipal. I sort of feel like you and I are on the same page. I especially love municipal elections when I'm a candidate. And to reinforce my passion for elections, I even love Strata Corporation Board elections. I'm not ruling out.
Those might be the most contentious.
I'm not ruling out a future go at a Strata Corporation, but today, forget it. No way, I would never do that. Yeah, thanks for the additional information and to prime folks in this early going for the election that's on the way. I fully support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Thank you. Happy to support and also provide any opportunity to promote the participation in the election. I'd love to see Squamish lead the province on voter turnout, and I think that opportunities such as this and promoting the register to vote, which we have up on the screen, is incredibly important. And so yeah, thank you very much for the work and for seeing and taking an opportunity to promote the next steps. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So Council, I think we've earned ourselves a little break before we dive into the back half of the agenda. We have some pieces there, so we'll take a 10-minute recess and we'll reconvene at let's call it 12 minutes at 20 after. Thank you. Okay, we're back. So now we're on to we have no late agenda items, no correspondence action requested, but we're on to items referred from the consent agenda. So I think both were, or one was a correspondence. So we'll start there, which is the Heritage BC piece. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. Yeah, I pulled this. Well, Kirsten Clausen is one of my favorite people in the world. That's part of the reasoning. So this is a letter that, within the letter, there's a request that council consider declaring February 16th to 22nd Heritage Week. It's Heritage Week in British Columbia. So just thought I would see if council would support a motion to declare February 16th, 22nd Heritage Week in Squamish. And if somebody wishes to second that, I'll speak to it further.
Second by Councillor Anderson. Go ahead.
You know what? I think that kind of covers it all. Heritage is important. And it's something that a concept that Squamish, I think, has not done super well. And there's room for improvement around our heritage preservation within the community. And I just see declaring the week in February as one small way to draw a little bit of attention to heritage in our community.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Councillor French has mentioned Kirsten Clausen, the current executive director of Heritage BC. And Kirsten Clausen was formerly, for a number of years, the executive director of the Britannia Mine Museum, and performed exceptionally well in that place, especially in the fundraising and what she did to build that facility. And she's done the same. She wasn't quite ready to retire and joined Heritage BC as their executive director, and has really brought some spark to that organization. And as far as we're concerned, she's maintained her connections to this community and recommended to her team Squamish and Britannia Beach as the locations for the Heritage BC 2026 Annual General Meeting and Conference. So it will take place between May 4 and May 6 at Squamish Adventure Center and the Britannia Mine Museum. I may be missing another location, but she has also had her team, her team has involved our planning department in that conference, as well as the Squamish Public Library. So on the occasion of Heritage Week, I'm happy to support Councillor French's giving profile to this, but let's also look ahead to that event that will be hosted here in Squamish and Britannia Beach in the first week of May. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We don't really have a.
Oh, Mayor Herford, in addition to that motion, I will move also to receive the letter from Ms. Clausen.
Okay, thank you. I'll second that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then the next item was the report. So I just want to make sure I get the title of it correct. Respectful Workplace Policy 2025 Annual Report. I believe that was you as well, Councillor French. You want to start us off?
Yes, indeed it was. Useful information in this report, and I'm thankful for the details that have been brought to council. Very concise in one page and just a few sentences, but that was pretty much what I was expecting. And I did want to ask, of the 8 complaints investigated, could staff share with us how many of those were resolved using a third party?
So just, before we do that, I just want to remind council and anyone watching that generally when we pull something from the consent agenda, we may not have the appropriate staff to go as deep. So we'll take allow some questions now, but that the response may require more staff than we have in the room, but I'll go to Ms. Glende.
Thank you. Through the mayor, staff's preference is to refer this to a future meeting so that we can provide the detailed information being sought.
Yep. Okay. So the numbers in the report that we received, they do come as a bit of a void because there's nothing to compare those numbers to. And when I originally had the request to see these numbers, it didn't occur to me that this year's numbers alone wouldn't really tell us very much. So I'm thinking ahead now to the possibility of augmenting the information that we've received. So this may too require a bit more research, but I'm wondering from staff, could those historic numbers, say dating back to 2015 or 2016, be provided to council within a month or two, or is it a bigger project than that?
Do we have anyone that can give us what a reasonable time or time frame for that information, or what's perhaps a shorter time frame that could happen sooner? Or is this all for that next meeting? Okay.
Okay, so would staff like a motion?
The motion, I think, would be to bring this back to committee of the whole meeting for further discussion. Although, given that we see gaps now, I think that articulating something there, I don't want to be prescriptive with the timeline, but investigate what reporting would look like or something like this. Sorry, I'm just trying to, I'd be hesitant to, I wouldn't support nailing down a time, a date range for what you're looking for, but I understand what you're looking for. So with that in mind, do you have a motion?
I had a different motion, but the discussion today is making it clear that my original thought for that original motion is not really going to get us to where we're looking for. So
let's refer this. If I would suggest you move to this be referred to future committee of the whole meeting, and then we can make comments. It's not a preferred path, but then we can try to figure out how to best address that.
yeah, okay. So my motion would be that we refer this to a future meeting and receive the report and that we receive the Respectful Workplace Policy 2025 annual report.
Thank you. You're seconding that, Councillor Stoner? The entirety of it? Great. And I think that that point of having this was I think met the exact wording of the motion. I do think having some additional context would be helpful, whether that's possible. Even 1 year prior would be more than what we have. We've heard some comments around what it would take for that sort of decade worth of data, and perhaps we have that more in-depth discussion on that when this does come back to us. But if there was something that could happen in between, it'd probably be useful to inform that conversation. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think this is a good idea for us to have a long-term view of the respectful workplace incidents in our district. And as this comes back to council, there are simply 2 words right at the end of the respectful workplace policy that I'll be looking to for staff advice on whether they could be removed. And that's in the sentence under section 9, compliance reporting. This information will be provided annually to council upon request. And this is the update, the number of incidents investigated and resolved. And my question would be if we could simply remove the upon request and make it a regular annual piece of reporting that council sees, and therefore moving forward, we would have the information to be able to look back on without having to make an explicit staff request.
Okay, we'll have that discussion at the, thanks for the heads up on that piece, but we can have that discussion when this comes back to us. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I think that was everything pulled from the consent agenda from my memory. Yep. Great. So now we're on to business arising from the minutes. On January 6th at the regular business meeting, we contemplated a amendment bylaw for 1001 Finch Finch, building number 2. And I just wanted to go to Ms. Von Budeau to orient us with the process we're undertaking here.
Thank you. The reconsideration process is laid out in the council procedure bylaw. So it requires that it be brought forward by a council member that's voted in the majority and within 30 days. So based off that criteria, it meets the requirement for council reconsideration. The process for reconsideration is council must first deliberate on whether you would like to reconsider the motion. If there's an affirmative vote based off of that deliberation, then the motion that is being reconsidered is put back on the floor as if it was not voted on in the first place. So it essentially reopens up the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, council. So the first piece is that we will entertain a motion to reconsider, and then we'll go into it. So it's a two-part. So I'll go to Councillor Hamilton was the sort of the impetus behind this. So I'll go to you to start the process.
Yeah, thanks very much. So first I'll speak to the reason for bringing this back for reconsideration. My primary challenge with this application was the lack of the proponent's willingness to dedicate childcare space in exchange for the reduction in employment space that they were receiving through the rezoning. It has come to my understanding that the proponent is now willing to dedicate I believe it was 266 meters. I could be incorrect on the exact number there, but a substantive amount of space to childcare. And so I would like to have this motion reconsidered in light of that willingness on the proponent's part.
Just, I was going to double check with, I believe I know the answer to this. In other scenarios, we haven't been able to entertain new information after a certain point in our process. Are we bound by anything like that with this process? That's a question for whoever would like to take it, I guess.
No, you're not bound by anything. This project was public hearing prohibited. So staff posted notice in accordance with the legislation prior to consideration of first reading. So there are no other barriers to reconsidering new information at this point.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Hamilton, thank you for the comments and the context. I suppose we need a motion to explicitly that council reconsider this decision, and then that needs to be seconded. We'll debate that and we'll continue on from there. So I'll leave you to start that process.
Fantastic. So I'll put forward the motion that's in our agenda that the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw 101-1001 Finch. I'm not going to read the whole thing because that's all. Be brought back for reconsideration.
Okay. That's the important part.
Be brought back for reconsideration. Yes, I can see your concern being met. Yes, that bylaw be brought back for
reconsideration. Seconding that, Councillor Finch. Thank you. Would you like to add any other comments besides you kind of started with that? You're welcome to.
I will add one comment, which is not to do with this application on its own, but my consideration of requesting a reconsideration. One of my hesitations, I do have some reservations about using this system, using the 30-day reconsideration policy within rezoning applications. I think that it's possibly just extends the length of time it takes proponents to get through the system if they think that they can start, if this system starts to be used more regularly. So I have reservations of this calling for reconsideration, setting some kind of precedent. I sincerely hope that isn't the case, because I'm willing to reconsider this because I do believe that this is better for our community if this goes through with the change that's being proposed to include childcare.
Thank you. So again, this is on the should we reconsider? which I know is tied to the overall question, but if we could try to keep it to that, Councillor Penigo.
Process clarity, if I might. If I'm recalling correctly, if this was supported, it wouldn't then result in a simple up-down vote on the prior resolution as previously, like it would open up the opportunity for amendments and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the matter would be like that vote didn't happen, and then we're back to where we started.
Okay, thanks. I can ponder that for a moment.
And I'm getting nods from staff. This is a bit technical, so make sure that we're on side. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, appreciate my council colleague sharing his deliberations on this. I too am kind of torn on whether this process is a fair and accurate one, but it is one that exists in our procedures bylaw. And my biggest hiccup with where this landed was not being able to secure one of the other critical things through the rezoning process that was identified in the neighborhood plan was childcare in exchange for some of the employment space. So if the developer is willing to covenant that, then I think that the proposal in delivering purpose-built market rental housing and potentially secured childcare spaces will actually deliver on some of the core things that our community desperately needs. And so I'd be willing to entertain reconsideration for that reason.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? I'm speaking in support. I think this is as others have said, this is a mechanism that we do have available to us, and whether it's appropriate or not is the discussion that we're having here. I do think that it's important that we have a opportunity to reconsider things when perhaps we haven't things when there's a response from a proponent is the reasoning here, and it's also provides space for a little bit of maybe sober second thought on the side of the proponent as to perhaps I should reconsider my position on matter XYZ. In this case, it's covenanted childcare space, and that's essentially what's happened here. So this is a matter that this mechanism, just to remind anyone watching this, can be used by anyone who voted in the majority of a decision or the mayor. In this case, it was brought forward by Councillor Hamilton, who voted in the majority. So we're on side procedurally, and I'm happy to support this and re-engage with the topic, and we'll see where we get to. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm torn as well. I think I will support this and should not foreshadow, I guess, what my conclusion will be when we actually discuss this. I do want to, put myself in my colleague's shoes, and if I had doubts about a vote and would appreciate the ability to spend a bit more time with it. I think, is it a tool when, it's just one more step in an already overly drawn out negotiating process? Is that a good use of our time, staff time, and so on? I'm not so sure. So trying to, I guess give my colleagues the grace to examine this a bit. But yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one as well.
Okay, well, we'll get to I'll call the question on the matter of reconsideration. So all in favor? Any opposed? No, motion carries unanimously. So now we have now we're back to sort of a clean slate of considering this motion that's in the package. We do not have the support staff to answer additional questions beyond Mr. Vilniskis, who's very capable, but we don't have the normal accompaniment. So do we have, sorry, I just want to ask the question that in the discussion we just had, there was a commitment around covenanting the childcare space. Can you speak to the proponents and how has that been articulated to staff? Is that something that we're ready to action, or where does that sit at this point?
Thank you. Jonas Vilniškis, Senior Director of Community Development, and I'm not the staff on file, but I do have some information from Ms. Philp Our staff have been in contact with the applicants and have reviewed their proposal for a commitment, which is basically 266 square meters of gross floor area in the ground floor of building 1. And that would be more than what's required by VCH for 36 space facility. So if council wants to entertain an addition to that motion that was previously considered, there would be another bullet point with that language.
Thank you. And the outside space was already contemplated in like the interplay between those interior and exterior requirements from VCH are contemplated in that statement you just made?
So the interior requirements will generate the exterior requirements, essentially.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Pettingill, did I see your hand earlier? Sorry, I just wanted to get that piece of clarity out of the way before.
Yeah, I just want to make, we're not doing the reconsideration tonight. That happens at a future meeting, correct?
No, it's happening. This is where we are right now.
So
we could move to do it. That you could make a motion to do it, but this mechanism this is it right now, lacking that direction to come back at a future meeting.
Okay, I missed that beat, and I thought when we had done this before, it then got put on a future agenda, and I would like to spend a bit of time and thought with what's on the table now. So it's prepared to support reconsideration. So I would actually move to see this come back. I'm not ready to. I don't feel like I'm
just going to double check with staff process wise if did I speak correctly there that this is live now and we can do this now, but whether we should or not I think is an aside, but we can do this, right?
You can do this right now, and council's process typically is to do reconsideration at the meeting it has brought forward at. I can't think of anything that would prohibit you from deferring this to a future meeting for consideration, like we normally do a notice of motion. And then consideration of the notice of motion is at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. So we've heard from councillor who's ready to make a motion of deferral by the sounds of it. I'm curious whether, I mean, we could entertain that right now and see where it goes, I guess is the way to figure out when and how we engage with this matter, if you're ready to make that motion.
Yeah, I would make that motion and speak to it if seconded.
So the motion is that this matter be brought to a future meeting. Is there a seconder for the motion? I see. Okay, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Go ahead.
Yeah, just myself, I'd been prepared to I thought about reconsideration and that took up my mental space, but looking at what is this, where are we now? I personally would like some time to think about that. I would like to, I didn't sort of review the whole, because this was just in my mind, the reconsideration, like whether or not we're going to reconsider, not an evaluation of the thing. So I haven't put my mind to that. And I think, there have been a number of procedural changes from the province where there is less community input and public hearings and so on and so forth. And I do feel that maybe this is a step too far, like at least giving the community a week or two. So if it's next week or the week after, for the community to have that opportunity, if we are reopening this up with a different amenity or offer.
Okay, I'm going to go. I saw Ms. Von Budeau looking to weigh in on this matter.
Apologies. So it has been flagged that if we defer reconsideration, it will be outside of the 30 days as stipulated in the bylaw and the legislation. However, because it's on the table tonight and you're deferring it, it is likely fine, but I can't speak to the increased risk of doing the actual reconsideration outside of the 30 days.
So again, maybe I'm misremembering, but when we dealt with this with wood fiber, and I think maybe one other thing, it was you had to have the vote to reconsider within 30 days, but you didn't have to do the reconsideration within 30 days.
That's what I wanted to flag, is that we don't know for sure if it is clear that we wouldn't be more susceptible to a challenge.
And that was a
outside of the
different
30
process
days.
that did have a public hearing element to it. So I understand why we're all taking on lessons from from that experience, but we do have advice from our staff here. So I'll look to other comments around. I'll come back to you before we call the vote. Go ahead.
Clarity on that item, on that would be valuable to me. Is it a 5-minute break kind of investigation, or is it a come back to us later kind of investigation?
We take a 5-minute recess just to confer.
Okay, I'm just going to go around the room to see if there's any other questions that might, just so if we do take this break, which I'm supportive of, we don't come back and have to trigger another, necessarily another one to answer that. Any other concerns that you want to take into consideration before we do this? Okay, so that's it. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We're just back from a quick break to get some for staff to confer and to provide us with some advice. I will go to our corporate officer.
Thank you. Staff don't recommend that council extend beyond the 30 days as it isn't without risk. However, it is at council's discretion.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. And that motion was to defer. Councillor French?
Yeah, Mayor Harford, I won't be supporting the motion. I'm ready to deal with this now, and I'd like to take care of it tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, I also won't be supporting the motion on the floor, and I did second it for discussion. I appreciate my council's comments and considerations around process and procedure, but I think that this is a fairly specific change for an item that we deliberated on for a fairly extensive period of time just a few weeks ago, and so I'm happy to deal with it this evening.
Thank you. I also will not be supporting the motion. I also am ready to engage on this matter here this evening, and we've just heard that extending is not without risk. So weighing those two things, I'm prefer to address this here this evening. And all the materials that were originally supplied for this are still available to us. So and we've discussed the one factual matter that has changed. So with that, I'm going to call the question on the matter of the deferral of this topic. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Hamilton, Anderson, Stoner, French, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. So now we're back to the main topic. Councillor Hamilton?
So I'd like to move, get the wording right here. I don't call it the staff recommendation at this point, that the point 1, that the District of Squamish zoning bylaw, 2200-2011 amendment bylaw number 3043 2024 be given third reading, and that the council authorize mayor and corporate officer to execute the amendments as described through points A to D, with the following addition: that a minimum of 266 square meters of gross floor area on the ground floor of building 1 be secured for childcare facility use only.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner seconds. Any additional comments?
I think I said most of what I needed to say during the motion to reconsider. But my thoughts here are that ultimately this is a benefit to the community that is important, particularly in the Loggers East neighborhood, with a fairly low coverage for childcare. So I look forward to seeing this come to fruition.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor. I did not support the original third reading when we considered it a few weeks ago. There are some real trade-offs here in the proposal as presented. The request through the rezoning was to add additional purpose-built market rental at the expense of a fair amount of square footage for commercial and office space. For me, one of the key things that I spoke about a few weeks ago was ensuring that if we were going to do that, that the proposal still met some of the key components of the Loggers East neighborhood plan, which clearly articulates the need for at least a childcare space of 36, a childcare facility or space that would accommodate at least 36 children. And the addition that has been presented here this evening to covenant a minimum of 266 square meters is, from what I understand, double the Vancouver Coastal Health requirement for 36 kids. So I am grateful that this is here. I think it makes it a much stronger proposal in terms of delivering what we had envisioned for the Loggers East neighborhood plan through this set of rezonings. It is still a trade-off. We are getting less commercial space than I think we had anticipated in this mixed-use development. But for me, securing the market rental as well as the childcare space is worthwhile, and makes that trade-off defensible. I will say, and just in terms of considering this evening, I think it's also important to do, because this was not, I think reconsideration at this point for a rezoning shouldn't be a reopening of the full file. It's not about going back and doing a full renegotiation. It's about, I think, a really strategic approach. And so I'm grateful that we're doing that this evening as opposed to reopening it more fully. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional comments? Councillor Penningill?
Yeah, I am not prepared to support this. I didn't support it when this came to us before. And I may not have, probably wouldn't have supported the reconsideration if I'd known it was happening tonight. Even though I didn't support it before, and with what I recall, this is not enough to have changed my mind, but it would be my practice to go through over all of the materials again with a fresh set of thoughts and eyes. And I did understand a reconsideration vote might be happening. It wasn't clear to me, or I guess a miss on my part, that we would actually do the reconsideration tonight. So I was not prepared to reconsider the actual thing. Again, at the end of the day, I'm not sure this would have been enough. I am concerned about the employment space, the loss of employment space, and a few other things. The no gas covenant is a positive in here, and ignoring some other things, more secured child care space is a good thing. But there are some things in here that, as I recall, were still challenging, and I'm not, with the information I have in front of me, prepared to go to support.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, I supported the initial proposal that ultimately was, and I was in the minority on that decision. This really sweetens the deal, and I don't know how many times in this room we've got a sweeter deal when things come back. So thank you to my colleagues for bringing this back for reconsideration with this new, given the new information and the new commitment that we've secured through it. So happy to support and see this move ahead. I think the needs of our community are are quite profound in many categories, and this addresses two of them in a positive way, being purpose-built rentals, which we know we're experiencing somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.2% vacancy rate, and there's a dramatic need for that. Childcare continues to be a challenge in the community, and even our existing and successful operators are having a challenge operating. So I think it's incredibly important we do what we can to support the continued development of childcare space. And that has come at the cost of employment space. Now, I think the employment space piece here, we have to be, in my mind, is a hypothetical employment space, because it wasn't going to get built without tenants stepping forward. And through the many years of this project, that hasn't happened. Now, I do think it's important that we keep that we continue to pay attention to this category of employment space. But I think given the site-specific aspect of this, I'm happy to support and move it forward. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill, Greenlaw opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Did I get that right? Councillor Pettingill and Greenlaw opposed? Yep. Thank you. So next we have some pieces of correspondence, and I'm sorry, this is a while. The process is a little different than normal on this. Was it Councillor Greenlaw? Did you pull this next one, the View Royal one? Yeah, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair. Okay, so I know there are a few issues on this on this list that this council was supportive of, and of course, there's 216, which has raised alarms in many municipalities across the province. But for me, the bigger issue lies in this pattern of the erosion of powers of municipalities, concurrent with the downloading of costs and responsibilities onto the municipalities from provincial and federal governments. And so that, for that reason, I'm testing the waters. I don't know how I feel about applying resources to enter into legislation for against the province. Like, I don't think we have the capacity and probably not the political appetite for that avenue, but I was wondering about writing a letter of support, if council would be supportive of that.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
And sorry, just for clarity, is this like a letter of support to View Royal for the work that they're embarking on, or who is the letter of support to?
Yeah, I think I think it would be to View Royal, and then perhaps CC to maybe ministers and our representatives as well in Mr. Valeriot. But it's just to kind of signal that some of these changes are alarming, and they do represent an erosion of democracy that our citizens are experiencing. So to me, that's the piece that that's the piece that I want to express, is just that municipalities are taking notice that these changes are impacting our ability to govern effectively.
Okay, Council, any questions for your call on this to your colleague? Be looking for I understand the intent. We just got to turn that into a motion so we can get this. Yeah.
And through the chair to my colleague, so I understand that, and we've made a very strong and official response on Bill M216. I am curious about the other ones. I know Bill 44 and 47. I actually don't know Bill 13 and 15 off the top of my head, what those are referencing. And so I'm just curious if, from your perspective, the erosion of democracy from the actions that the province took from specific elements of these bills, all the bills, is it specifically the housing legislation? I'm just, before we actually write a letter of support, I would like to better understand what it is that we're trying to articulate.
Fair. Yeah, well, I do feel like some of the aspects of seeing how some of the housing bills are rolling out, I do think some of that is actually problematic in hindsight. But perhaps what we can do is maybe defer this conversation to a committee of the whole and spend some time there, or maybe I can clarify the request and come back at a later date.
I'll look for some thoughts from my colleagues, but similar to Councillor Stoner, I'm not familiar with all of these pieces. So before we sort of weigh into something that I think the reply to a letter of support, which I'm not all the way there comfortable to support at this point, would likely be a further invitation to participate versus. So I really want to make sure I understand this before I could comment on that. But Councillor Penigal.
Yeah, I did speak to my colleague about this going forward a while ago, and I at that time wasn't feeling supportive. Having some more time to look at this, it's sort of parsing it apart. So there's stuff in 44 and 47 that, in general, I think is important that the province has done, and I would put 13 in that as well. A couple things that make me feel a bit itchy with 44 and 47, and we've talked about some of the busy work that's caused by some of this stuff. 15 and 216, we've commented explicitly on 216, are really concerning, and so there's sort of a mixed bag. I'm not sure I'm all there on all of these being something that needs a judicial review, but there are some concerns. I wonder if the appropriate mechanism for this is, although timelines are short, do we think about parsing out some of the specifics for LMLGA resolution, some of the particular ones where there's consensus, and we are going to be having that discussion in the next week or two.
Okay, so Council, we need a path forward here. I think my preference is we move receipt of this and advocate on either the broader issue independently and maybe can CC these folks as interested parties on anything that we do there around the general, we could call it that matter of removing local authority. And we have done, as we've just heard, some advocacy on the pieces that are called out here that were impactful for us. I think in the name of like that busy work comment we just had, I think referring this to a future meeting is more of this taking up our capacity rather than actually like addressing the issue. So I'm prepared to move receipt, but keep this in mind as we go forward and look at advocacy for UBCM and whenever every other opportunity when it presents itself. So I'll move receipt. Seconded by Councillor French. Yeah, I think this is the path forward, but I will continue, and I encourage all of us to continue ways to connect with our other local governments that are working, that are advocating for and working for change on behalf of all of us in the province, and ways we can support that. And perhaps there's a way in future we can lean in with some support that we've maybe already provided or some feedback we've already provided on some of these matters can be packaged up to help make their case. But I don't believe that we need to count. That can be something that we can come back, bring back if needed. So I'm good for now. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. I will support the motion on the floor, but also thank my colleague for pulling this particular correspondence, and happy to continue to work with you to figure out what some good pathways are for continuing to advocate and raise where our concerns are. Similar to Councillor Pettingill, I think that there are elements of some of these bills that we have supported around this table, and there are some that we have been really concerned about. I'm not prepared to, as presented in the correspondence, put staff time or capacity to this kind of working group at this time. There's been a variety of different ways that folks have started to show their frustration. There's a group of 16 Metro mayors who did a press release around the implications. There's increasing number of municipalities that are just keeping track of the amount of dollars and capacity that they're putting into all the things that are being downloaded on them. And so I think that there's different ways that we can do this, and I'm happy to brainstorm on how that can be most effective going forward.
Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, and I know our past discussions, so I'll just make it as a comment or an assertion, and people can correct me if it's needed be. But again, from my perspective, our LMLGA resolution consideration is not closed, and so I think I'm happy to help offline. We should look, are there particular elements that we want to construct some LMLGA resolutions around in the next week or two?
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So next we have the Health Professionals Organization call for health assessment of British Columbia LNG industry. Was that you, Councillor Pettingill? Yeah, go ahead and speak to it.
Yeah, thanks. So I pulled this. It's from folks who are raising sort of concerns and alarm about some of what they're seeing in terms of air quality impacts in the north related to gas and LNG production. And I know VCH is involved in some studies here. And as asserted by one of the letters, an independent health impact assessment of LNG infrastructure has not been done. I think it would be worthwhile having these folks, again, this is medical professionals I'm speaking about. SFU is also doing some of this work. This is an area of significant community interest that I hear about. I have significant concerns, but it's not clear to me exactly what the gaps are, what is known and what is not known at this point. And so from my perspective, I think it would be useful for me to understand where to direct my advocacy to help our community understand what is or isn't known at this point and what is being looked at, where are the gaps. I think would be incredibly useful from people who are experts in the field. I think in my mind, some of this might tie in with the, hopefully the BCER decides to come and they could maybe speak a little bit to some of the existing regulations. And so I would like to invite these folks to come to a future meeting to speak about, again, that sort of what's known and unknown as relevant to Squamish. The letters kind of speak more focused on the CGL pipeline and Kitimat and asking us to advocate on that, which may make sense. I would personally support that, but I want to understand where are we in potential risk here? Is this a small thing possibly, or could this be a big thing? And where are we and what we know and don't know, and providing that education and understanding for myself and the community, I think would be valuable.
Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. Can I just seek clarity from my colleague? Like, who are we asking to come? The letter that has been presented requests support for advocacy for a independent cumulative impact assessment. That aligns with the call from the BC Health Officers Association. So is it like the BC Health Officers that were, my understanding is that this, yeah, so who are we asking to come to council?
So in my understanding, it is the folks leading Cape and Cane, so the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, Canadian Association of Nurses for the Environment, are working, collaborating with VCH and SFU, who are doing the actual research. And so I have a proposed resolution that's sort of worded having Cape, Cane, and VCH for now as the names, but throwing it to them to say, please bring a delegation, being clear that it's sort of experts in the field as opposed to the more advocacy side we're interested in. But the folks sort of working on who have the expert knowledge on what is known, isn't known, that piece. I don't know what to call them. I have some correspondence from a professor at SFU who has worked on this in Australia and is working on this here, one as well. I think from UBC. And so anyways, a resolution that's vague enough to get the right people here. They know who the experts in this topic are.
Okay, I was going to move you to, do you have a motion crafted?
Yeah, and again, fine to the tweaks. Again, it's getting the experts. So resolve that Kate, Kane, and VCH be invited to bring a delegation to a future meeting to present on air quality questions and concerns related to LNG as might be applicable to Squamish.
Sorry, just before there's a seconder, I just saw, did you have a question prior to consider? Yeah.
Yeah, a question for my colleague. What upcoming decision do we have that this provides information for? Like, how does this contribute to a decision within our local authority?
I think this probably speaks mostly to advocacy, as I shared with this group, and I think I've had support, at least to proceed investigating. My understanding there is some related issues around air quality and incineration and so on. So I'm looking to understand what is the sort of local risk from these things. I see it as playing into our LMLGA advocacy and others, and I don't expect with timelines that we would have this presentation before we approve our LMLGA resolution, but I would expect to have this sort of likely the language of a useful resolution. This presentation, among other things, would help fill out some of the understanding behind that resolution. I think add understanding. So from our resolution perspective, I think it could be useful. But again, it's the community understanding. Should the community be worried? The community also may want to be doing their own advocacy. I think some folks will say this is a real big problem and you should all be really worried and you should consider moving, kind of thing. And other folks are like, who cares? It's not a big deal. I would like to provide a platform for some truth and understanding. And these folks seem like exactly the experts working on that, like VCH and so on. And they listen to us. They don't necessarily do exactly what we say, but our concerns matter.
Okay, so we've got are you seconding the motion? Yeah, you're welcome to do that as well. Are you doing both of those things? Or would you like to say something before you second it? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think from my perspective as a scientist in this field, I feel like the scientific perspective is being completely ignored in the entire conversation around the oil and gas industry. And I think that the health impacts is part of that. So yeah, there are people, there's just a lot of misinformation going around, and there's a lot of people who believe that their opinion is equal to a scientist's opinion in these matters. So I think it's from my perspective, a large part of this may not be in informing decisions that are within our jurisdiction, but also actually just providing a platform for our public to have access to real information from scientists who are qualified to speak to these issues. And I think that that is also an important role that local government should be playing. And this is a potential way to create that platform for the appropriate people, the responsible, appropriate people who should be giving that message, as opposed to, media, which is often under some influences.
Okay, so Councillor Pettingill, can you just repeat your motion? I believe you, and then we'll see if it's seconded and we'll debate it.
Resolve that Cape Kane and VCH be invited to bring a delegation to a future meeting to present on air quality questions and concerns related to LNG as might be applicable to Squamish.
And seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Anything to add, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I did want to put the constraint on here is that even though the letters were talking about CGL and Kitimat and so on, I don't think this is the place necessarily to provide that platform. This is like helping for local understanding. Is there a local concern to inform potential local advocacy, or, really put local concerns to rest if that's really a separate thing and isn't relevant here.
Okay. Councillor Greenlaw, any additional comments as seconder? Nope. Here. Look to my colleagues. Any other comments? Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I won't be supporting the motion for the reason that I think that there are three categories of information that might be brought to a council presentation. We've referred to expertise, experts. We've referred to advocacy. And in the current dialogue around this topic, and we've had a number of different items of correspondence, and there's lots of discussion around it. But what is missing is the regulators. That's the third category of information. And I feel that listening to instead, and first of all, to the regulators is more in line with our responsibility. I will also point out that the wood fiber LNG facility, and including in its current incarnation, because it has had some redesign, has been reviewed by the Ministry of Environment in connection with Vancouver Coastal Health. Vancouver Coastal Health, and I was involved in it as a representative of a local air quality management plan overseeing society, and but along with VCH. So VCH has been involved with the Ministry of Environment and local, in fact, District of Squamish appointees, because District of Squamish staff were involved in reviewing this. And maybe that needs to be revisited, but I would prefer, first of all, and as a priority, to hear from regulators rather than from scientific experts or advocacy representatives that are going to be speaking to situations. I respect that Councillor Pettigrew has brought this up, Kitimat and Prince Rupert and other locales. So regulators, that's who I would be supportive of hearing from. And so that's why I won't be supporting this particular motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor. Stoner?
Thank you. Through the chair, I also won't be supporting the motion on the floor. While I appreciate where I think my council colleagues are coming from in terms of trying to shed some light on this growing concern, and I want to recognize it is a growing concern both across the province, mostly from the lived experience in Kitimat, some of the stories and real data that are coming out about LNG Canada flaring 15 times more the amount of gas than it was ever expected to be flaring, constantly living in plumes of black smoke and bright lights are disconcerting at best. And listening to some of their council meetings with having very little recourse, especially with the BC Energy regulator at the table, but basically approving the continued increase in flaring, raises concerns. For me, bringing Cape and Kane to come do a delegation doesn't solve those concerns for me, or doesn't provide a very fulsome platform for this council to identify where the opportunities are to hold a regulator to account. My understanding is that the ongoing research with UVic and VCH is ongoing, has not been completed. And I would hope that once that is done, that they come to community and they present their findings, whether that's shared with council and or with community through a library presentation or something like that. But as presented, I was and still will be willing to bring forward a motion to support the ask that is in the correspondence before us, which is to support and ask and call for other orders of government to do an cumulative health impact assessment on the gas sector. I think that that is somewhere that we can lend our voice, but I won't support the motion on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I'm considering the comments of my colleagues, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Stoner. I hear those comments, and where I'm left is the information, the data that Councillor Pettingill is hoping to have presented to us, I think is valuable. And I support the motion. I think that where Councillor Pettingill is trying to take us is appropriate at this time, and I'm open to it.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I certainly resonate with the notion that science absolutely needs an unbiased platform, but I think I actually think that platform lies within open access journals and scientific publication and not within a local government council meeting. So while I absolutely support open access to scientific data and information, I don't see our council table as a primary mechanism for that. As a means of distribution. Regarding advocacy, that's the other significant benefit that comes from hearing from folks like this. I think that we are better placed to put our advocacy into the advocacy channels that exist, like LMLGA and UBCM. This one might not be exactly appropriate for that, I understand, but for us to be writing letters and having conversations directly with other orders of government, I think is a more fruitful path forward than having council discussions on a matter that is effectively up to VCH and provincial regulators.
Thank you. I also won't be supporting the motion. I think that this is one of those situations where I very much support the sort of the desired outcome. I share the desired outcome of knowing more about this matter and where regulation falls short. In the context of a concerned citizen or forwarding us a letter that was addressed to the chief examiner for environmental guidelines at Japan Bank of International Corporation, and us inviting them here, I don't think that's the best avenue to get this piece. We know that there's work happening on this through UVic, and perhaps there's another group that can come in and speak to us on this, including the regulator. I do think it's important we hear from the regulator. I don't think the regulator is the sole source of truth in all matters that they're regulating, but I do think it's an important piece so we can look at this from what is regulated, figure out where those gaps are, and move forward. And I know folks are working on that. I commend these folks' work, and and what's happening in Kitimat right now is unforgivable in my opinion. And but I don't think that this motion quite gets us where we need to be. And I'm happy to work with my colleagues to find out what that path can and should be to so we can have the appropriate conversations that we need to have. So with that, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry, you want final comment to you? I'm going to call the question.
Well, yeah, I wonder if my colleagues might, if this is an issue of the wrong people, like if it's better to just be VCH, like I'm wanting to get the right people. This seemed like these folks know who the right people are. And to my colleague, government is often criticized for being inaccessible and information being accessible and complex. I think we do have a role to play in making the information. So don't say to people, well, if you care about LNG or care about these things, you're hearing concerns, go understand a scientific journal. I think we have a role for our citizens for one of the most, what we recognize as one of the most impactful projects to provide some information, some level of good information to our citizens. So it's not just about us advocating, it's about giving our citizens the tools to share their advocacy with us or the provinces they see appropriate. And so I think that's an important piece that can't be understated. Again, before I was on council, I was on the LNG committee. That was partly about figuring out where as a district we wanted to have regulation. Again, I wasn't elected at that time, but it was also really about there's people from all different groups in the community helping the community understand what this was about, what the truth was, what's actually going on here. And I think providing that, again, this seems simple enough to me that a 40-minute presentation at a committee of the whole could be sufficient in this case, but that sort of filling some of that gap, I think is important.
Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, just another point on that. Like, scientific papers are absolutely not a place for the public to receive scientific information. One, it's like not accessible. I mean, where are they going to look? Were they going to go to Elsevier and download some journals? And two, it's not information that they can digest. And when we are living in a situation where our media is quite frankly sponsored, like quite literally sponsored by oil and gas companies, they are no longer a reliable source of that information. When we were talking about the erosion of democracy in the last conversation that we brought up with me requesting the letter of support, Bill 15 is the Infrastructure Projects Act, and I know for a fact that it is being utilized to bring power to LNG projects. And our government, frankly, is being blatantly dishonest about it and misleading. So to your point about whether or not we should bring in regulatory bodies to talk about it, I mean, we can, but who's working at the regulatory bodies now? And where are they going to be in 5 years? Because a lot of them are going from government to industry. And frankly, they should be following science in their regulations, and oftentimes they are quite far lagging behind the scientific information, in part because the LNG industry is quite a new industry internationally when you're talking about fracking and the impacts of export facilities. Frankly, our regulatory bodies are just not caught up on what can be happening because we've never done it before. So I think that's another point here is this information is all very new and frankly understudied. Yep.
Okay. I think we need to call the question here, and from comments it feels like this vote is likely to fail. If that's the case, I'm happy to work with my colleagues to figure out a way to surface this. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor and opposed? Councillor Hamilton, Anderson, Stoner, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I'd like to move that council write to the provincial government and Health Canada calling on them to conduct an independent cumulative health impact assessment on the BC gas industry in alignment with the resolution passed by the health officers of BC in fall 2025. I'll send that to you, Victoria, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Hamilton seconds. Comments?
Thank you. As I read the correspondence that we received, this was, I think, the core of the ask as presented in the request was that actually a lot of this data doesn't exist. Just to my colleagues' points previously, is like there's a slow growing body of evidence, but the ask is actually to do the work and to get the appropriate regulators to do the work. And so I think part of it to me is adding our voice to that chorus of folks who are calling on this to make sure that we have good long-term data. And I will absolutely continue to work with my colleagues to find good avenues to have fulsome debate and discussion on this. I don't, maybe this is to the previous motion, but I still don't think that a committee of the whole even is a very good place for dialogue as we've experienced. It's one-way questions from council to staff usually. And so there's absolutely a good piece of work that needs to be surfaced and discussed amongst our community members. And there's different ways that we can do that. It doesn't need to be in a council meeting.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Happy to support this. I think this is important, does make sense. But I will, speaking to the last motion a little bit, taking the opportunity, we'll be happy to work with the mayor. Maybe I didn't identify the right folks. And again, my focus was not on their ask because their ask is a little less relevant. I think there's a bigger issue for us, which is helping our community to understand where we are. And if there are gaps and there's just a whole bunch of unknowns, I think communicating that. And the regional district, we've had more delegations recently, but every time there's a delegation here, we had Twin Politics come and, so there's all kinds of really useful, I think, things for our community. It is an important role I think we serve as a body providing reliable information to our community. So,
yep. Thank you. And I'm open to more comments on this. So we'll try to keep it to the matter that we're voting on. Happy to see this, to support this. I think this is this ask makes good sense, and happy to make that happen. So with that, I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we have no notice of motion. Open question period, clarification related to agenda items. If there's anyone that has, we could open up to council members if needed. No takers tonight. Councilor staff announcements. Anybody? Nope. Next, we don't have a motion to close this evening. We do have a council staff in camera announcement that's there on the agenda. I'd be looking for a motion to terminate this meeting. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by, I'll second that. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.